Hello guys and welcome to my YouTube channel. I did not think I would ever say that sentence, but I said the same about the podcast, and yeah, we're now nearly 70 episodes deep, so why not bring it to YouTube as well? I suppose the reason for starting it is similar to my reasons for the podcast as well. On social media, so mainly Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, it's all short, snappy stuff, and it's very hard to go into anything, I suppose, in any sort of significant detail. And with the podcast, I suppose it allows me to talk about different topics that are linked to fat loss, muscle building, overall health, etc. in more detail. And I thought it would be beneficial for you guys to maybe have another source of information from myself, or a place where you can get more information. And yeah, hopefully you'll find some of these videos useful. Hopefully you'll find them entertaining, and yeah, hopefully you'll take something from them. So this first one is essentially, and I hope you can see the board clearly, the camera set up here on a suitcase, so it's very amateur stuff today, but hopefully in time we'll get better. But it's basically how you can lose 10, 15, 20 plus pounds over the next 12 weeks or so. So the reason I chose 12 weeks, from tomorrow, Monday, it will be 12 weeks until the 1st of July. And that's typically when people will be, going on their holidays and all the rest. And I think ideally you want to be coming into the summer months with the fat loss phase done and at maintenance, rather than going into what's typically a busy time socially, trying to be in a calorie deficit and navigate your way all around these, events that are coming. So yeah, ideally you'll be able to get down to your dream body composition in time for the summer, and then be able to go through the summer at maintenance. We'll enjoy it more. So yeah, that's pretty much what this video is about. So the first thing we have to work out is what your calorie target is. So everyone has a certain amount of calories that they need to eat per day to maintain their weight, and that's going to vary depending on your height, weight and activity level. So that's the first thing we have to establish. Now, there are lots of different calorie calculators online. The Harrison-Benedict formula is seen as being the most accurate. Now, when I am setting up the calories for, say, a one-to-one client that's coming on board or whatever, I typically use the James Smith calorie calculator. Shout out to James Smith. Daddy's watching this, but he uses the Harrison-Benedict formula on his one. So if you type that into Google, enter in your details, so your height, weight, your activity level, etc., that will give you an estimate for what your maintenance calories likely is. Now, as I said, it's only going to be an estimate, and we won't know for definite whether that number is accurate unless we start eating that amount consistently and then, say, tracking our body weight over a set period of time. But let's say you plug in your details and it comes up that your maintenance calories is 2,000. So essentially, to lose weight, you need to eat less than that amount. The amount less you eat, I'm saying that correctly, so the amount you eat less will determine the amount of weight that you lose, or the pace you lose at, if that makes sense. It's probably a bunch of an explanation, but hopefully you get the gist of it. So let's say, typically most people want to lose, or they probably want to lose faster, but it's recommended that you lose around 1% of body weight per week. Typically works out to, say, about 1 pound on average, 1 to 2 pounds per week. And if you're losing that on average, you're going to be in a great place. That might seem slow week to week when you're losing a pound, but over the course of a year, that's 52 pounds. That could be life-changing for somebody. Between now and July, that is, say, 12 pounds, give or take. So that will keep us in that, or that will have us losing around, 10 to 15 pounds. That's our target that we're aiming for, if you like. So yeah, that's a very, very good rate of loss. Normally in the first week or so, or couple of weeks of a fat loss phase, you tend to see things move a little bit quicker than that. Some of that is body fat, some of it is water and glycogen, and then after a number of weeks it starts to level up. But basically, if you're losing 1 pound per week, you're in a good spot. So where are we getting this 500 figure from? 1 pound of body fat roughly equates to 3,500 calories. So we need to be in a deficit across the week, if you like, of 3,500 if we want to lose 1 pound per week. So 3,500 calories divided by 7 days of the week gives us 500. So going back to the maintenance part of the start, of your maintenance calories is 2,000 per day. If you subtract 500 from that, that'll give you 1,500. So basically, if you eat 1,500 per day, you should be, and you're that as in based on the the estimate that the calculator would have given you, you should be losing roughly 1 pound of body fat per week on those amount of calories. So yeah, that's how we find the figure. Now, if you want to lose more than that, you definitely can, especially if you feel that you have a lot of body fat to lose. If you're someone who is trying to, say, maximize muscle retention during a fat loss phase, or maybe even try and grow some more muscle, or you're an athlete that's trying to, maintain your, say, performance, whether it's on the pitch or the track, or whatever, or high rocks, it probably doesn't make sense for you to be losing much faster than that, because you are at risk of losing muscle tissue and your performance being negatively affected. But if you're someone that has no real muscle building goals, or you're not doing any other sports and you just want to lose as much body fat as you can, then don't be afraid to lose a bit more or to go into a bigger deficit. I put up on the screen, actually one of my current one-to-one clients. He has lost 35 pounds in 10 weeks, and essentially he's lost it because he is, or has been, eating in a bigger deficit than what I've been allocating for him, if you like. And at the end of the day, if there's no issue with energy, no issue with hunger, then don't be afraid to put the foot in the gas. Excuse me. So yeah, that is how we're getting this figure here. Now, as I said, that's only an estimate. We'll only know for definite if that is putting us in a deficit when we start weighing ourselves daily. So in this fat loss phase, if you like, I want you to weigh yourself every morning. So as soon as you wake up in the morning, you will go to the bathroom, jump on the scales and record your weight. And the reason we do it daily is that it gives us a more accurate read of how this amount of calories is affecting your weight loss goals, if you like. So after, say, a 2-week period, if you're coming down at the rate that we want to be seeing, so as in 1 to 2 pounds per week, you're in a good spot. If it hasn't been coming down at that pace, then that's a sign that, okay, maybe you haven't been tracking as accurately as what you would need to be, or that figure isn't accurate for you, as in you need to go a little bit lower. But I'll get to that in a second here, or later on. So once you've established your calories, you're saying, okay, I need to be eating 1,500 calories, I reckon, to lose weight. Then you have to work out your macros. So your macros are essentially your protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So for protein, I suppose the benefits of it, in a fat loss phase, are that it will keep you full. Obviously, it will help, build and maintain muscle as well. But with the goal being purely, fat loss, it will help keep us full. So the more that we get into our diet, the fuller we're going to be, and the easier it'll be to stay within our budget. So we want to be aiming for roughly 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. Now, if you are within your calorie target, it doesn't make a huge difference if you're not hitting your protein. Like if you're a little bit low in protein, but you're still in the deficit, you're going to lose weight. But I think it is good practice to aim for this amount, because it will make losing weight easier, and it'll mean maintaining it, or it'll make maintaining it easier as well at the other side of the fat loss phase. So let's say if you're 150 pounds, you want to be aiming for roughly, say, 150 grams per protein, or 150 grams of protein per day. Now, if you wanted to scale that up, go for it. It's just going to mean that you'll be fuller and all the rest. But generally, that's where you want to be aiming for. Now, let's say you're someone who feels, right, I've got a lot of body weight to lose, and let's say you're 250 pounds, you're thinking, right, 250 grams of protein is a lot. What I would say in that case is nearly decide what your dream weight is, or what your target weight is, and aim for that. So if you're 250 pounds and you'd like to be 170 pounds, then aim for, say, 170, in around that would be a decent target to aim for. Fats, you want to aim for 0.3 gram per pound of body weight, and carbohydrates, I've left that blank because it's just that's the remainder, if you like. Now, carbs and fats are really our personal preference. From a hormonal point of view, you don't want the fats going much lower, I would say, than this per day. But if, for example, you are, let's say you're over this on a given day, you've eaten, say, 0.45 grams per day, or you're a little bit over your carbohydrates, whatever, don't sweat it. It's not a big issue at all. It's a case of stay within your calories, get close to your protein target, hit your colour targets, and if you do that, you'll find weight loss very, very easy. So I have to take down this sheet here, so I've got a few of them ripped off, so I'll pause this video and I'll get back to you in the next one. Okay, so the next part of this fat loss plan is just that, setting up your plan. And this is really important. So if you have, let's say, 1,500 calories, what you're aiming for, you need to decide, right, how am I going to distribute that across the day? Am I going to go for 2 meals, 3 meals, 4 meals, 5 meals? Is there going to be snacks in there? I think it's really important that you establish some sort of routine for yourself early doors, rather than, winging it every day. The more structured you can make this fat loss block, the easier it's going to be to adhere to it. So routine really is everything. So for me, I typically go for 4 meals a day, whether I'm in a fat loss phase or in a gaining phase like I am at the minute. I suppose from a muscle building point of view, it's probably more beneficial to, I would say, have at least 3 or 4 meals per day than 2, just so you can spread that protein distribution out across the day. But if the goal is fat loss, not a major deal really, or just predominantly fat loss, you don't really care about preserving muscle, or you're not a gym goer if you like. So yeah, establish how you're going to set it up. Meal times, get really clear on this. As I said, I typically eat 4 meals per day, and I have them at pretty much the same time every day. So breakfast is normally around 8 a.m. My next meal is around midday. Next meal's at 4 after the gym. Last meal's around 8 o'clock. And I suppose by having them spaced evenly, it's easier to manage the hunger, and you tend to find that your energy is more stable. Whereas if you are, say, having breakfast at 9 o'clock and then you're not eating to 2 o'clock, you're going to be starving, and then you're way more likely then maybe to overindulge come 2 o'clock, or you start raiding the cupboards for your next meal or whatever. So get really clear on your meal times and ideally space them evenly. You don't necessarily have to have breakfast. That's another misconception people have. I will do more videos obviously going through different topics, but just to briefly touch upon that, they say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. The way I'd rephrase it is the first meal of the day is probably the most important meal of the day. What time you have it at doesn't really matter, but you do want to make sure that when you are getting that first meal in, that you have some of these things here, or all of these things here, that I'm about to discuss. So get clear how many meals you're going to have and what time you're going to have them at. Now, building a meal. Very often when people start off trying to lose weight, they try and build or bring, their old habits with them. And what I mean by that is they say, right, well, my calorie target is 1,500 per day. As long as I eat, no matter what I eat, essentially, I'm going to lose weight, provided I can stay within that amount. And while that is true, it'll always catch up on you. So you have to accept, and it's hard to hear, your habits ultimately have gotten you to this point where you're watching this video, and that you are, trying to lose body fat or whatever. So you have to accept that, right, those old habits, they're probably not going to be the ones that will help me lose weight and get to my new target and my dream body composition, if you like. So we need to look at building new habits, and this here is very, very important. And if we can do this consistently, it's going to make losing weight so much easier. But as I said, out the other side, it's going to mean maintaining that weight loss in the long term is going to be much more straightforward. So in every meal, ideally we want to have a protein source, and I've just put 30 grams here at least in brackets. So if, for example, we take breakfast, a lot of people will think, look, I'm being healthy this morning, I'll have my porridge and put a bit of fruit in. And it's a great breakfast option. It's got source of carbs, obviously, from the oats. It's got the fruit in there too. But there's no protein source. And because there's no protein source, you're likely going to have that bowl of porridge at 9 o'clock, whatever, and then be starving come 10:30, and then be, hulking through the biscuit tin or whatever. So we want to make sure we have a protein source in there. So for the likes of porridge in the morning, a good protein source to have with that might be Greek yogurt. So putting in like a good 200 grams nearly of that. Maybe pairing with a protein yogurt, a protein pudding, a whey protein powder. There are very convenient ways of doing it. And the reason for 30 grams here, as I said, often people will say, well, look, okay, I need to get a protein source in here. I will have, 50 grams of Greek yogurt in my porridge. The dosage with that isn't high enough. It's not going to get you next or near 30 grams. Similar to people saying, right, okay, I'm going to get a protein source in. Bit sick of porridge now, but I'll have an egg. And they have one egg and think, well, look, that's the protein box ticked. The protein box is ticked, as in there's a source of it there, but again, the dosage isn't high enough. In one egg, there's about 6 grams of protein. Again, not anywhere near this here. So we want to make sure that every meal revolves around the protein source, whether that is, as I said, Greek yogurt, whey protein powder in the porridge in the morning. If you're having eggs, go for at least 3 or 4, to be honest. Maybe pair it with bacon medallions, turkey rashers, smoked salmon, whatever. That's going to keep you fuller and make it easier then to get to your next meal, if you like. For the likes of your lunch, not there's anything wrong with the ham sandwich, but in Ireland anyway, it's typically a very, very thin slice, and again, isn't going to be getting close to 30 grams per day. So instead, what I'd be saying, if you're normally having a sandwich for lunch, throw in like a good 100 grams of cooked chicken into it, or 100 grams of turkey, 100 grams of tuna, give or take. That's going to up those numbers. Or you could say, right, I like my ham sandwich, I don't want to ditch it. then maybe, okay, I'll have my sandwich and then I'll pair it with a protein yogurt or whatever after, just to boost the numbers. So that's really important. So every meal ideally has this, some serving of fruit or veg. Most people typically undereat protein, and they also eat very little of this here, fruit and veg. And it sounds very simple or very obvious advice, but the more of this you get into your diet, the more fibre you're going to get into it, which is great for overall health. But it's also going to help keep you full as well, because typically in fruit and veg, the calories are quite low. The highest calorie fruit is a banana, and there's maybe 100 calories in one of them. And realistically, you're never going to eat, 2 or 3 of them in a row. So if you add in, a load of strawberries, for example, to your powers in the morning, or even for your breakfast, maybe if you're having eggs, maybe throwing in, say, some mixed peppers, mushrooms, onions, whatever, into that's what I normally do anyway when I'm in fat loss phases. It's going to add significant volume to the plate without actually increasing the calories much at all. Similar for your dinners, having a bag of frozen broccoli or frozen mixed greens, whatever, in the freezer, and just getting into the habit of having that consistently with all of them. It's going to, get the fibre nice and high, and it's also going to help keep you full as well. And then the last one then is the carb source. So this one here isn't really a must. Like, as long as you have, I suppose, these two, and you're going to be fine. But I just think this is a simple way of, I suppose a simple way of assembling your meal. So for me, I eat pretty much the same. Sorry guys, my battery died in the middle of that. So this amateur first take, it's even worse. But as I was saying, I hope you can see this as well actually. Hope it's not too blurry, but for me anyway, I typically eat the same meals most days anyway. Certainly my breakfast and lunch anyway are very repetitive. And if I'm sort of following this template here, it will normally be, say, eggs in the morning, and that could be, say, 4 eggs. I will have, normally some mixed peppers or mushrooms ever along with it, and normally have a mandarin afterwards, and, say, 2 slices of bread. My lunch then, or my next meal, is overnight oats. So again, I've got the oats here, I've got the frozen fruit, and then my protein source is normally a scoop of whey protein powder, a protein yogurt or pudding or whatever. My dinner is normally, again, the protein source, say chicken breast, maybe 100, 120 grams of it, say broccoli, mixed peppers, carrots, whatever, and then rice, potatoes, etc. So if you're following that sort of a template, you're going to be in a great place. Now, I would also recommend probably following my guide on that and being, I would say, lazy with your nutrition. And often people, when they start off in a fat loss phase, they get excited about making all these sort of fancy recipes. And while that's great, and if you're someone who enjoys cooking and you don't mind doing that, then crack on. But I would definitely recommend keeping it very simple and keeping it very straightforward. So if you can identify, say, 1 or 2 breakfasts for yourself, 1 or 2 lunches, and maybe, say, 3 to 4 dinners. I know people typically like having a wee bit of variety for the dinner, but especially for your breakfast and lunch, realistically, do you need a high protein, low calorie French toast on a Tuesday morning? Probably not. And it's also the time and effort that'll go into making the like of that. If you can say, right, I'm either going to have, say, Greek yogurt, frozen strawberries and oats, overnight oats essentially in the morning. That's going to be breakfast number 1. Breakfast number 2 then could be, again, the 4 egg omelette or whatever, and a wee bit of toast with some fruit. Then just rotate them during the week, right? Monday is overnight oats, Tuesday is the eggs, Wednesday back to the overnight oats, Thursday the eggs, etc. Same for your lunches. So maybe you'll say, right, I'm going to have, say, 100 grams of chicken in a sandwich with a piece of fruit after. That's lunch number 1. The next day you can say, right, I'm going to keep that sandwich template there, but I'm going to sub out the tuna for the chicken, or I'm going to swap the mandarin for the pear, or whatever the case is. And I think that's a very effective way of looking at it. Keep the blueprint the same, but plug and play certain ingredients. So, for example, if you were having, say, eggs in the morning, you're saying, right, the eggs is going to be one of my breakfasts. Maybe one of the days you'll say, right, I'll have 3 eggs, I'll have, say, a slim bagel or whatever, and I'll have a mandarin. The next day I'll say, right, getting a bit sick of oranges, I'll put in a pear there instead, or a plum. Okay, getting a bit sick of 3 eggs, maybe I'll drop it to 2, and I'll add in some bacon medallions, turkey rashers, whatever. For the sandwich at lunch, you were saying, right, a wee bit sick of chicken salad sandwiches, I will swap out the bread for a wrap. The next day I'll swap out the chicken for tuna. Next day I'll swap out the fruit again or whatever. And the same goes for your dinner then. And dinner, you can probably be a lot or be very creative with the dinner. So Again, if you use one of my standard bro dinners of chicken, say rice and broccoli, one day you might have sriracha sauce with that. The next day you might have curry. The next day you might have hoisin. The next day you might have soy. Maybe you might say, right, I'm going to have the chicken and then I'll sub in maybe prawns the next day, or I'll sub in lean beef, like that 4 or 5% beef mince. Getting a bit sick of rice, okay, I'll put in potatoes, I'll put in sweet potato, I'll put in noodles. So the point is, you can make like one tweak to a meal, like going from sriracha to hoisin, that can be enough to make it feel like a totally different dish. It's obviously very similar, but the flavours will be different, or subbing out the chicken for prawns, whatever. It's very handy ways of tweaking meals without actually tweaking too much prep or tweaking the calories significantly also. So that'd be my advice. Keep it really simple. 1 or 2 breakfasts, 1 or 2 lunches, 3 or 4 dinners. Snacks, so we're out of the room here, so we'll squeeze in here at the bottom. There's no issue with chocolate, sweets, ice cream, whatever, scones. If you can fit it into your calories, not an issue. So if your calorie target is 1500, if you can fit in a dairy milk at say 220 calories every day, you will lose weight. The only issue is sometimes people can have one that can lead to 2 or 3, and that can say push them over budget. So if that's you, what I would say, or what I would recommend, is either pairing it with a protein source and some colour. So as in, rather than having your chocolate bar on its own, maybe have that with say Greek yogurt and some fruit. And I suppose by doing that, you're going to be fuller, you're going to be more probably satisfied afterwards. Whereas if you just have it on its own and you're hungry before you eat it, you're more likely then to want more. I would also have it immediately after a meal. So for example, in the example of the chocolate bar, having your dinner and then having the chocolate afterwards, again, you're going to be fuller and it's going to be easier to stay within your budget. You could also pre-log it into say MyFitnessPal or whatever food tracking app you're using. If you can pre-log that at the start of the day, it allows you to see, right, what do I have to do today to fit this in? So if my calorie target is 1500 per day and I want to fit in a 200 calorie chocolate bar in the evening, then that means I have 1300 calories in to play around with the rest of the day. So having a wee bit of preparation will make it an awful lot easier. There was one other thing I was going to say here and it's completely skipped my head, so I will, it might come back to me. But sorry, that was it, For the likes of the snacks, if you're someone that feels, right, I have one and I struggle to leave it at that, I would be very mindful about what you're bringing into your environment. Not that you want to demonize certain food groups, but an example of the chocolate, if you're, say, buying multi-packs of it, you have one maybe purple snack and right, there's 4 or 5 others in the cupboard, it might be more difficult for you then to leave it at that, and you might end up going back in for, the rest of them. Whereas if you can just say have a bar individually and say, right, this is my one bar today, at least then once you have it, there's nothing left there to tempt you. So there are a few handy tips. The next one then will be your activity. So we're back now and we're talking about activity. So when it comes to weight loss, calories are king or queen, whatever way you want to look at it. And it doesn't matter how much activity you're doing. If you are consuming too many calories, you're not going to lose body fat. And often hear people say that when initially reach out saying, well, look, I'm very active, I'm doing X amount of steps. I am doing, I go to the gym very regularly, but I'm not dropping body fat. Again, hopefully you can see the board there. And that's just down to you're consuming too many calories. So on the flip side, I've also worked with people who don't go to the gym at all. Like most of my client base don't do that. They just, I suppose, get how the whole food thing works and they walk a bit more, and that's pretty much it. So the food is definitely number one, and you can't, outwork a bad diet if you like. But with the activity, the more you do, the more calories you're going to be burning. The more calories you're going to be burning, the bigger the deficit you're going to be in. The bigger the deficit you're in, more body fat you lose. So basically, the more active you are, it certainly does help. So with the steps, 10K is often the number that people will just immediately go for. And there's nothing spectacular about it. It is a very good, I suppose, number to aim for. But if you're someone that is doing, say, 3,000 steps a minute, it's probably not achievable or realistic for you at this early stage to say, right, I'm going to jump into 10K. So what I would normally say in that case is whatever you're doing at the minute, see if you can add 2,000 on top of your current average. So if you're doing 3,000, go to 5,000. If you're doing 7,000, go to 9,000. And see then, can you build a wee bit of consistency with that? Over time then, it does make sense to increase that. Realistically, I don't think you'd have to go much higher than 12K really, unless you're at the very tail end of your fat loss phase, calories are low, and you're trying to, yeah, you're trying to keep that activity as high as possible. But ultimately, I suppose the more steps you do, the better position you're going to be in. And I think to ensure that you get them ticked off, you want to make sure you're planning them in. And that's one thing you'll get from maybe not this video, but the rest of the ones to come, that I'm very, very big on time management with this. And ultimately, the more organized someone is, the easier they're going to find this whole process and the more success that they're going to have. So give clear time slots and treat your steps or treat your gym sessions like they are hair appointments or doctor appointments. We never miss the hair appointments. But over the doctor appointments, hopefully you're not missing them too. But when you clearly map it in for yourself, you're way more likely to follow through with it. So rather than saying, right, hopefully this evening I'll go out for my steps, it's not clear enough. You want to say instead, right, 7 p.m. this evening, I'm going to get them done, or 7 a.m. tomorrow, I'm going to get up and get them chalked off. So be really, really clear with them. Gym stroke cardio, again, not essential. Once you have your food in place, you're going to drop body fat. But if you are someone that's saying, right, I want to get in the gym, I know there's loads of benefits to that, which there certainly is, and I want to build or start building in that habit. Be realistic again, similar to the steps. If you haven't stepped foot in the gym in 6 months, there's no point in saying you're going to go into every morning. It's not going to happen. So I would maybe start with, say, 2 sessions per week and see if you can build a bit of consistency with that. And again, have it planned in. So clear time slots, treat it like it's a hair or doctor appointment, and you're way more likely to follow through with it. 2 sessions would probably be if you're someone that's trying to maintain, say, your muscles, and if you're an athlete and you don't want to see, say, losses to your performance during this fat loss phase. 2 sessions per week is probably the minimum what you should be doing, because ideally you want to be hitting each muscle group twice per week. So that can be, say, 2 full body sessions. If you're doing 2 sessions a week, that can be an upper lower full body. If you're doing 3, that can be upper lower if you're doing 4. But at the very least, I would say if you're hoping into the gym, then 2 sessions per week would be advisable. Can't remember what the next sheet is, but yeah, we'll go to that one next. Okay, so we're back with 2 more now to go through. So this one is making changes. So when do you adjust your fat loss plan? So your reward essentially in a fat loss phase is the more progress you make and the more body fat you lose, the harder you have to work to keep losing it. And if you think about it, let's say someone starts off at 100 kilos and they drop down to, say, 85 kilos, whatever. Because there's now 15 kilos less of them, the body doesn't need the same amount of calories as what it did to maintain that weight. And as a result, the calories that maybe they were eating at the start, that's no longer putting them in the same size deficit. So typically the deeper you go into a fat loss phase, you do have to make more adjustments to your plan to continue losing at the desired rate, if you like. Now, if there has been, say, no change to the scale weight, as in the average weight over, say, a 2 or 3 week period hasn't moved, then that's a sign that something's off. Now, if it's been 3 or 4 days and it hasn't moved, don't panic. Fat loss isn't linear, and it would be great if every day we say hit our calories or hit our steps that we'd see a drop on the scale, but it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So yeah, just know that if you're weighing in daily, and I definitely recommend doing that. I think I've got a point on that here somewhere. Maybe I don't, but yeah, you want to weigh in daily because it's going to give you the most. It's going to give you more data essentially, and it'll allow you to see, right, is what I'm doing here working or does it need to be tweaked? You want to focus on the trend rather than the single days in isolation. There's always going to be fluctuations, and again, I'll do a future video on that. But essentially, weigh in daily and assess the trend. And if it's been, say, 2 or 3 weeks and, okay, the average weight hasn't moved for me, the first thing I want to do is be really honest with this. Have you been consistent? Because often people, the answer to this question will be no. So what I mean by have you been consistent, have you truly stuck to that calorie target consistently? I don't just mean Monday to Friday and then going away over the weekend. Like, have you truly stuck to your 1500, say, on average across the week? And if the answer is no, it's then okay, I haven't been truly sticking to the calorie target, I've been going over, and maybe I haven't been tracking, a few bits here and there, or maybe I haven't been hitting my steps consistently, then do that first. Do that first for another, say, 10 days or so. And then if there's been no trend or no change to the scales, that's when you move on then to this here. So again, if you've done those things and the answer is still no, or sorry, if you've done those things and there's still no change, or you feel, actually, do you know what, I have been pretty consistent, then you have 2 options essentially, and this would probably be the best one. Reduce calories, very simply. Now, I've said roughly by 100 here. If you have been eating, say, 1500 calories per day, you were losing on average, say, £1 per week, and then that slowly started to slow down, then go to 1400 calories, or maybe 1350 you can manage it. 100 is a pretty good starting point. I'd always tend to do that. So reduce your calories by 100. Now when you reduce the calories, it's really important that you keep the protein high. Probably higher the deeper you go into a fat loss phase, because again, when you have less food, you're more likely to be hungry. But the higher you keep your protein, the fuller you'll typically be. So again, if the calories are reduced to 1400, make sure your protein's still to 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. Make sure your fats are still where they need to be, as in the minimum amount, and then ideally maybe pull that amount, or the remainder then, from carbohydrates. So yeah, reduce your calories and or increase your activity. So if you were doing, say, 7,000 steps per day, and you're saying, okay, it's got me this far, maybe need to now increase it. 1.5k will roughly equate to the same as what a 100 calorie deficit per day would as well, or would do, if you like. So, okay, from 7k, I'll go to 8.5. And obviously, if you do both, even better. But I would do that then for another, say, 10 days or so, and reassess. And you should find then that things will start to move for you. And essentially, just rinse and repeat that process until you reach your desired weight target, like your ideal body composition. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's when you make changes. If there's been no movement of the scales for 2 or 3 weeks, make sure you've been consistent. If you have, then follow these steps here. Last sheet. So the last one here is social outing. So how to manage the nights out, the meals out, etc. when they come. It would be great in the fat loss phase if we could press pause on the social life and just get it done and get out of the way, but that's not the way life works. And ultimately with this, like, there's never a perfect time to start, and there's always an excuse if we want to find it. So whether it's, now at the minute coming into summer, it could be Christmas season, or birthdays, maybe, I don't know, you have a weekend away coming up, whatever, or a wedding. But like, there's always going to be these obstacles that we have to essentially navigate if we want to get the result. And I suppose even at the other side, when you do get to maintenance, like, it's not as if these things aren't always going to be there. Like, there's going to be a weekend away, there's going to be holidays, these things are going to happen. And it's about working out how we can still get the result we want while enjoying them, if you like. So the first step is plan ahead. Absolutely crucial. So let's say, for example, you have a meal out on Saturday. You ideally want to have it identified at the start of the week. Now, obviously, sometimes things will come up last minute, and that's not always possible. But by and large, if you can identify that at the start of the week, it allows you to put in place your plan for it, if you like. The next one then is calorie bank. So reduce calories. So let's say, for example, you're eating, again, 1,500 per day to lose weight, and you're thinking to yourself, right, I've got this meal out on Saturday, and I know come the end of this week in work, I want a few drinks as well. I'm going to find it difficult to stick to 1,500. What you have to do then is see, right, how do I split my calories up, or how can I distribute them across the week, so that I'm still going to be in a deficit across the week, but I can maybe have more to spend on Saturday. So hopefully I didn't butcher that explanation, but basically, instead of saying, right, I'm going to eat 1,500 7 days a week, maybe a little wee bit less during the week, and then I'll transfer those calories over to the weekend. That's another way of managing it. So instead of eating, say, 1,500 Monday to Friday, you might go to 1,400. So if you do that, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you've saved 500 calories for yourself there. So basically, that means then on Saturday is you'd have your normal 1,500 calories plus that 500 on top of it. So you'll have 2,000 extra, if you like. And that can definitely make it easier to fit in the meal out, or the food, drinks, whatever. When you start your calorie banking is personal preference. If you think it's going to be a big night, then it probably makes sense to do more days. If you think, right, maybe it's, I'm not going to drink tonight, or I'm only going to have, I'm going to go for the veg instead of the chips, whatever, in the restaurant, then maybe you might find, right, you know what, midweek might be time enough for me. But yeah, that's a personal preference thing. And how much you bank by as well as personal preference. So if you say, right, which actually, you know what, maybe I'll go a bit more aggressive. Instead of saving 100 calories per day, I'll save 200. Benefit of that, if you do that for Monday, then you'd have an extra, like, you'd have 1,000 calories on top of your 1,500 to play around with. So that's definitely a positive. The only downside can be if you're going if you're restricting a lot like that, you might find come Saturday you're just dying, you can nearly, dying for a big feed, and you can nearly go over the top then. So just be mindful of that, is what I would say. But yeah, essentially reduce your calories the days leading up to, and you should be fine. So yeah, you've got the meal out on Saturday. What I would recommend is pre-logging into MyFitnessPal or whatever tracking app you're using. What do you think you're going to consume? So what I would always get one-to-one clients to do, or what they can do if they wish, is send me over the menu, and we can go through together and see, right, what calories would be in some of these dishes you might go for. Now, in a typical restaurant meal, in a typical main course, if you're getting a side, you're probably talking about 1,000 calories on average. Now, I'm not saying that to try and demonise eating out or anything like that. It's more just about being aware of that. But again, if you can fit in your calories, not an issue. So the best options would always be a lean protein source and your colour. So what would that look like? That would look like, say chicken breast with sauce on the side or whatever, and a serving of roast veg or salad. Or it could be, say, hake, cod that isn't battered, or salmon, again with a side of roast veg or the salad. The sides are typically the likes of, say, chips, sweet potato fries, champ, gratin. They're always in around 500. So just be mindful of that. Whereas a roast veg could be, say 100 to 150, maybe 150 if there's oil added in. But you can ask them not to put oil or no butter to it. And I suppose in terms of volume, you're going to be getting similar amounts of food on the plate from the veg what you would do for the chips, but you're going to be saving, potentially say 350 calories in the process there. So let's say you say, right, okay, I'm going to go for the hake, and I'm going to get a side of roast veg along with that. And you estimate, okay, that's probably going to be, I would say 450, 500 calories, worst case scenario, say 450. So if you pre-log in that into MyFitnessPal and work backwards, you'll see, right, well, 450 is gone on that meal out. I know I've got, say, 500 banked at the start of the week. What is my remainder and what have I got left? And then essentially just work backwards and fill in the blanks. So maybe you might say, right, you know what, I normally have my breakfast at 9 a.m. Today I'll skip it, or I'll push it out maybe to 11. That might mean then that, if you normally have your breakfast at, say, 9 and then your lunch at 1 or whatever, you might get away with skipping the lunch or saying, right, I'll have my breakfast at 11 today. That might mean then that I'll get away with not having, say, something until 3 o'clock, maybe like a protein yogurt and a bit of fruit. And that might tie you over then till your dinner that night. So just about being strategic and actually just thinking about it and going, right, how do I still stay within my budget, if that makes sense. Don't forget the alcohol, it does have calories. In a standard pint, you're probably talking 200 calories on average. Pint of Guinness is 210, unfortunately. Some of the beers would be typically a wee bit lighter, maybe 180 or so, but say 200 is a decent ballpark. A glass of wine, typically say 130, 140-ish. Spirit and a sugar-free mixer would probably be our best bet. That's around 100. I think Prosecco's a bit lower than that actually, but yeah, give or take 100 for a spirit. So again, pre-log that in. So if you're saying, right, I'm going to have, 5 pints of Guinness, that's over 1,000 calories. So it's going to be very hard to have that and your burger and chip, whatever. But if you're saying, right, I want to have the few drinks. So if I'm going to have the few drinks, as in say 3 or 4 gins at say 300 or 400 calories, it's going to be hard for me to fit in the chips as well. So maybe I'll make a deal with myself. I'll say, well, I'll give myself the few gins, but I will just have the veg instead of the chips for my main. And so yeah, pre-log all in, work backwards. The next day, just get back to it. Now, if you're having alcohol, the scales might be down the following day. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that there's fat loss properties in alcohol. It's just a bit of dehydration. If you don't have alcohol, the chance of the scales would be up. And again, that's not you being punished for having the meal out. That's just the extra, that's just a wee bit of water retention from the additional salt that's typically put in those meals. So nothing to be concerned about there at all. And just, I suppose, a final point on the whole meal out thing. Often people will say, well, look, you have to live too, and I worked hard all week. I want to enjoy my fish and chip and my few drinks, whatever, and that's all well and good. But my view on fat loss phases are that they're not forever, and you want to get in and get out as quick as you can. Obviously, without starving yourself or putting these unrealistic demands on yourself. But by and large, you don't want to mess about, because the longer you're messing about in them, all you're doing is dragging it out even longer. So my advice would be keep the head down. Make the sacrifices in the short term. Once you reach your ideal weight or your dream body composition, maintaining that is so much easier than what it is. Maintaining that weight is so much easier than what it is to actually get there in the first place. So let's say you end up at the very end of your fat loss phase, you're eating 1,300 calories per day and you're losing 1 pound per week on average on that. That would indicate that your maintenance is 1,800 calories per day. So if you think about it, if you're used to eating 1,300 across the week and then all of a sudden you're able to eat 1,800, that's an absolute walk in the park compared to what you've been used to. And if you take some of these strategies here, like your calorie banking, your pre-logging, etc., you're going to find it an awful lot easier in that case, fitting in the nicer main course or the few drinks as well, maybe even dessert with the extra calories to play around with. So people often say you have to live too. I agree, but in my opinion, you live when you're at maintenance. That's when you get to enjoy the extra calories. For now, we've got a job to do, so see if we can keep the head down and see if we can get the result that we're after. So yeah, that is the last sheet. So thank you very much for watching the video. And yeah, if you can like the video, if you can subscribe to the channel, I think that's how people plug or how people finish these. And yeah, if there's any videos that you would like me or any topics I need to cover, you can drop it down in the comments below and I will gladly get cracking on them for you. If you are interested in coaching, I have some one-to-one spots available as well. So if you feel that, okay, well, I've got all the information now, but I need some help implementing it, then yeah, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook or TikTok and I would gladly help you out. So yeah, that's it for the first episode, guys. Hopefully you found it useful and I will chat to you in the next one.